Hello, and welcome to the Great Northern Game Night. I'm your host, Tony,
I'm your co-host Matt.
and we are here to talk about video games. So, just a little bit to get out of the way first. We are going to be finishing our trade-in games for this week, but starting next week, we are going to put the trade-in on hold, at least for now. Mostly, it's kind of a cause of like undue stress to worry about having to play this game before we start the next podcast. And I also don't really have enough time right now to commit to actively playing a game long enough to talk about it.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be something where it's just schedules permitting, that kind of thing.
So we're still going to use the podcast as kind of this engine for us to look at a game and say like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Maybe I'll get it for the podcast, you know. But
yeah,
it's not going to be a rigid thing like it has been, at least not for now, because I'm having a pretty busy semester at college. So,
and it's still going to be the same kind of content. It's just going to be less scheduled, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty much what we were doing on the show already, so we're not actually really dropping anything. But
less announcing a game up front and more maybe just playing some random games throughout the week and talking about it.
Yeah, a little less formal.
Yeah. And speaking of less formal, today we are doing our Mass Effect spoiler cast. So this one it's kind of an experiment in a less structured environment. So we have no notes aside from we are going to talk about Mass Effect.
Absolutely. This is basically just us deciding, hey, we both like Mass Effect a lot. And, there's an upcoming game and there's lots of content to talk about. So let's just talk about it for a while. And that's what this is. That's the idea.
Yep. And this one is kind of going to be Matt's baby in a way, because he knows quite a bit more about Mass Effect than me. I played the games, but
I'd like to think I'm educated on this topic, I guess. I mean, there's some media beyond the games, and I haven't consumed all of it, but I've read some of the novels, and actually, I think I've got them somewhere around here. I know there's a couple comics as well that kind of explain some things that happen between and before some of the games. The novels do that too. And there's a couple animated things as well, which I actually haven't seen. But it is sort of slowly expanding into this multimedia thing.
Oh yeah.
Not just games. So
it's become like a full-on universe at this point.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there were like talks of a movie. I don't think it came from them, but it's only a matter of time.
Actually, no. I think it is in the works. There is a Mass Effect movie being made. Well, it's pretty far off. I don't think it's coming up. I don't think it's in 2016. But I'm going to look that up, actually, while we do this. They were talking about it a long time ago, and as far as I know, it's still going. I don't think it was ever canceled or delayed or anything like that. It's on IMDb. I'm just going to check it here. Okay. But yeah, so that's a big thing. I don't think it's not like a new story. I think it's a retelling of the earlier parts of the series, from what I understand. In Mass Effect, the humans were kind of first exposed to the rest of the galactic community when they met up with the Turians. And the Turians are a pretty warlike race, and the humans, I mean, were assholes, right? So it didn't really go so well. And it was the First Contact War, as the humans called it, and the Turians just had some other generic name for it. But the description of the movie mentions that. It mentions humanity's first contact with an alien race. So it would be something along those lines. I think that they probably shouldn't stick too closely to the plot. It would be cool if they actually wrote like a screenplay that actually works well for film, based on Mass Effect. But I'm looking forward to that. I don't go and see a lot of movies like that. Video game movies don't have the best reputation, unfortunately.
But they're working on a Minecraft movie.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong with that? Clearly, Minecraft is just made for film.
Yeah,
Telltale knows. Yeah, but yeah,
probably
they haven't had a good history.
Minecraft movie than whatever Hollywood can make.
Probably, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be one that I go and see. And I've had a history with Mass Effect. I first played it on the Xbox 360 way back 2007, and I didn't first play it on the Xbox. I first played it on PC, and then I liked it so much that I bought the Xbox version afterwards. So I didn't play it in 2007, because I don't think that's when the PC version was released. But yeah, I've bought that game multiple times, not just the first one. I don't think I bought Mass Effect 2 twice. I can't remember now, but
I've done that
man,
before.
like on different platforms, not multiple copies on the same platform. I'm not that bad, but yeah, I liked it enough to do that. I definitely am a huge fan of the series in general. I acknowledge though that there are some problems with it. It's far from perfect. Hopefully the new game will kind of touch on some of those issues that the original ones had. But yeah, it's got a special place in my heart, definitely. But what about you? I think you're not as invested in the series as me, even though you like it. Like, how do you feel about Mass Effect in general?
I do like it. I think it's good that with the new game they're getting away from the whole Shepard thing, which definitely drug on 2 games than it should have. I mean, well, this is spoiler cast, so obviously there's going to be spoilers. By the way,
go ahead. Yeah,
he died at the end of the first one, right, and was brought back to life at the beginning of the second one, or did he die at the end of the second one and was brought back to life?
He, geez, I'm trying to remember now. He died at the start of the second one.
Okay,
I think. Yeah, that was where he was. See, I say I know these games. Yeah, he died at the opening cutscene of Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, that's right.
And then and in the first game he's fine.
2 was the resurrection one because that had Miranda and
Jacob. Yeah, the Cerberus goons. That's right.
So, I mean, when your second of 3 games starts out with your protagonist dying horribly and having to be reconstructed and brought back to life, you've kind of jumped the shark there. And then, like, what do you do between the second and the third one?
Well, it was weird because the whole plot of the second game is a detour. It is like a spin-off game. It has nothing to do. It has no influence on Mass Effect 3. And by the way, you know how they chirp
a little bit
at
the end.
You can,
at the end of Mass Effect 2, they're like, "Hey, let's talk about the Reapers some. Remember those guys?"
Yeah, remember those guys. And in Mass Effect 3, when, all of the decisions that you made in the first 2 games, you're supposed to import them, and then you have this whole overarching story that takes place and affects your outcome. If you played Mass Effect 3, it has this point system. I think it was called EMS. And basically, as you do things in that game, you get this military score, and the more points you have, the better your ending is going to be. Like, basically, the stronger
how prepared
your
you are
military
for war with the Reapers, basically.
Exactly. It's your galactic preparedness for war.
Exactly what it's called, actually, I think, is the galactic preparedness.
Yep, that's what it says when you when you open up.
Really awkward. Like, why not just use the word readiness? Why?
Maybe it was readiness, actually.
No, I think it's preparedness.
I don't know. But your final decision in Mass Effect 2, whether you want to save the Reaper base or the Collector base or destroy it, is a difference of like 50 points in Mass Effect 3. It means almost nothing.
Yeah.
And this is a game where you need several thousand points to get a good ending. So yeah, that was pretty disappointing. But it's also the fact that ME2 could have just not happened.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have changed anything.
I feel like they touted that feature like, oh, your choices will affect the next game. But even from 1 to 2, I feel like the choices that you import, their effects are minimal at best, aside from if Ashley's dead or if Caden's dead. That's the one big one. But everything else is like, oh, if you did pick this choice, one dialogue line and one cutscene is different than it would have been if you didn't pick. That's not affecting the universe, okay?
No.
That's not, like, if you let the Brood Queen... So I think that was in 1, the Brood Queen, right?
It was the Rachni Queen.
Yeah, the Rachni Queen. That choice has almost no effect. I think it's like a dialogue with Liara is a little bit different.
Well, there's an NPC on the Citadel, and she's an Asari, and she kind of relays a message to you from the Queen, and that's it. And come Mass Effect 3, there's a mission where you go and actually rescue what is kind of implied to be that same Queen. But if you didn't rescue her, or if you killed her off, then that mission in Mass Effect 3 is exactly the same, except that the Queen is evil. Like, it's the same mission. Yeah. They didn't change anything. And that one's notorious, by the way, because when BioWare was talking about, they were doing their whole advertising campaign, and, game devs these days are a lot more involved with their communities, thanks to the internet and social media and stuff. So they were saying things, and you can look this up. You can quote them on this. That your decision...
You quoting them on this.
That's right. Your decision in Mass Effect 1 on whether or not you save the Arachnite Queen would have significant consequences in the future, in one of the future games, and that absolutely did not happen. It
No.
basically didn't need to happen. You could have actually done that mission in Mass Effect 3 no matter what you chose in Mass Effect 1.
Yeah, and it makes sense because they don't want to bar a mission off from you based on a decision you made 2 games ago. So it's hard for them to really take your decisions and make them have huge effects like that. Because if somebody didn't make the right choice in one of the games, you're barring content from them, which is a big no-no.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you expect them to actually do that, and I don't think anybody's wrong for expecting them to live up to their promises, believe me. But if they say, okay, yeah, we're going to make it so you have these branching storylines and your choices will actually have impact on future games or future choices you have to make, and these things will happen because you did this, if they're really promising that and they really make it work the way we want it to work and to the degree that we want it to work, like, think about this. They're going to be developing like 2 games worth of content, right? To do that, and that's a massive undertaking, especially for games like these with enormous budgets from huge publishers.
We're reaching that point, though. We're reaching that point where people expect it. Budgets are high enough. Teams are big enough that they're delivering stuff like that. And that's something that I wanted to bring up. When Mass Effect 1 came out, obviously it was like groundbreaking. Like, look at all this player choice that you have. You can be a good guy or a bad guy. And the biggest issue is they didn't really evolve as other games took the shtick and made it better. So Mass Effect 3, I think gameplay-wise, Mass Effect 3 might be my favorite because obviously those systems are going to continue to be refined. But the player choice system is identical to what it was in Mass Effect 1. There are literally no changes. And at that point, that system is like 6 years outdated. I don't know the exact time frame from Mass Effect 1 to 3, but it was significant amount of time. And they just like everything about the game went forward and then that just kind of stayed the same. And in Mass Effect 3 it's not very impressive. Like another BioWare game actually, Star Wars The Old Republic does this a lot better, I think, where you can choose a good guy choice or a bad guy choice. But if you're playing a Sith character, they're both bad choices. But we talked about this in like the first episode of this podcast. It's like the difference between killing someone and torturing them before you kill them. Like, your good guy option is just to kill them, and your bad guy option is to torture them and kill them. In Mass Effect, it's way more black and white. Like, you'll get into a conversation with someone and it's like, I want to save all the people on this planet, or I want to drive a bus full of kids off a cliff. Those are your 2 metrics there. Really good or really bad.
Now, and to be fair, you're still Shepard, so even the bad choices, they're still kind of in favor of you saving the galaxy one way or the other. But some of them are blatantly like, okay, let's just be a dick.
Yeah, and the real problem is all the gray area choices don't do anything special. So there's no option really for someone who wants to play neutral aside from, okay, well, I'll pick a Paragon choice here and then Renegade choice here, and I'll just keep alternating between them to keep my reputation at the same level. But there's no true neutral path. Well, there is true neutral path in Mass Effect, but it's boring. It's picking the choices where like they ask you to do something and you're like, okay, I'll do it, and then you just walk away from the conversation. There's no special neutral conversations.
In Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, you really couldn't do neutral, because if you ever decided to not choose Paragon or Renegade and take a neutral option if there was one, you actually lost points. You had 2 different meters. You had a Paragon meter and a Renegade meter, and as you picked, you made decisions that were in favor of that alignment, you would earn points towards that alignment, and that would allow you to unlock more dialogue options for that alignment specifically. So
if you don't specialize in one alignment, you won't get. You'll get into conversations where you have no way to like take the best option in the conversation, because
you just have to take the shitty option.
Either Renegade or Paragon, same overall outcome, but if you don't have either of those, you don't have that outcome at all. So
now Mass Effect 3 actually fixed this, and I assume because this is kind of the best system, in my opinion, that they'll have this going forward if they keep that kind of gameplay, which they probably will because they're BioWare.
I guess that's one thing that evolved over the time is they made it possible for you not to have to take every single Paragon option or every single Renegade option.
Well, it's kind of weird how they did it because each of the 3 games had their own individual system, believe it or not. They all operated differently. Mass Effect 3, I think, is probably the best one just because it doesn't penalize you in the same way Mass Effect 1 and 2 did. With Mass Effect 3, you have one meter, which is your reputation. And as long as you have a significant amount of reputation, and you get reputation no matter what choices you make, then you always have dialogue options available to you. So you're never, like, even if you pick every single Paragon option, you can still choose a Renegade option down the road at like a high, sort of an end game choice kind of thing. Like at the end of the first game, if you don't do this and you take the neutral path a lot, then you can't talk Saren down. You can't. You have to kill him twice instead of killing him once.
It's so silly to me, the fact that you have to, like, in 1 and 2, you have to get like your Paragon high enough to pick certain Paragon options. It's like, well, I haven't been good enough to be this good. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I haven't been good enough in the past to have the option to be good right here. So you're shit out of luck. My bad.
Now, at least that was still, that was a problem with Mass Effect 1, but at least they gave you a clear option that, okay, if you want to be able to be a diplomat in one way or another, put points into the skill, and then you can do it.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2 didn't even do that. They had a system where the percentage of all choices was what determined how many points you had. So if you had maybe, so let's say 4 choices throughout the game, and you only picked 1 Paragon choice and 1 neutral choice and then 2 Renegade choices, you would have, say, a 50% Renegade score and a 25% Paragon score.
Yeah.
But you don't get any credit for the neutral ones at all. So those also kind of dick you out of being able to do whatever you wanted dialogue-wise.
Yeah.
You know?
Mass Effect 2 was always, it always felt weird to me because I would go for like a pure Renegade or pure Paragon playthrough, and I'd look at my score like somewhere down the line, and I'd have, like, if I was Paragon, I'd have Renegade points, and I'm like, I never once chose a Renegade option. I don't know where these points came from whatsoever. Like, I felt like sometimes I would just get alignment points. Like, maybe I made a neutral choice and it silently gave me Renegade points or something. I don't know. I felt like I always had one of those bars. The one that I wasn't focusing on always had some points in it, even though
a little bit.
In Mass Effect, and I guess I learned this from the first one and the fact that you could get locked out of choices. When I go for a Renegade or Paragon in Mass Effect, I always pick that option. I never go for the other one, which is another thing. In Star Wars The Old Republic, I like to pick choices like, I like to kind of build a person, like, it's role-playing, basically, which sounds dumb when you say it like that, but I like to build a personality for my character. And, like, so, like, my Sith guy in Star Wars, he's, like, a complete asshole. So I'm almost always picking the dark side options, but, like, I'll skip over dark and light side options if there's an option where I feel like my character, like, if someone insults me, there's like a dark side or light side option to insult them back or do something else. But then there's a neutral option to just attack them immediately. And I feel like that's what my character would do. If someone was insulting me, I would just jump them.
Yeah.
So
I want to see the light side insult option. It's like polite.
Yeah. Dark side option, you probably kill them after you insult them or something.
Probably. Yeah.
But Mass Effect never really, like, because of the way that they did it, they punished experimentation like that, basically.
Yeah.
So,
now that's what they finally corrected in the 3rd game. So you could, like, I played Renegade for most of one of my playthroughs in Mass Effect 3, but as long as you answer enough questions, no matter how you answer them, you still have the option to play Renegade the whole game, and then if you have a choice at the end, you could still choose the Paragon one if you wanted to. Yeah, if you felt like it was appropriate, for your character.
Your character can, like, have a change of heart or something, maybe.
And
do that. Like, it gives you more role-playing options, which to some people might sound dumb. I like it, though. I mean, especially since we started playing like D&D and stuff.
Like, you're not going to be evil all of the time. I mean, maybe some characters are, and that's fine too, but there's still lots of characterization to be had if you're just, not pure evil or pure good all of the time, right? Yeah.
It's nice that Mass Effect 3 fixed that. It's unfortunate that Mass Effect 3 has easily the weakest story of any of the 3 games, I think, at least. I actually, even though 2 was like a completely non-essential spin-off thing, I actually like 2's story the best, I think. I enjoyed 2.
That the boss was retarded.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I like a lot of the stuff about 2. The gameplay obviously is pretty good.
Yeah,
I liked the gameplay of 2.
Yeah.
And 3 is like a mixture of 1 and 2. It's like they took the best parts of both combat systems, basically. 1 is, I tried to play it recently, because I wanted to play through all the Mass Effect games again. I can't get back into it.
It's pretty archaic, yeah. The
Yeah.
first Mass Effect game, I think this is their first attempt at a shooter of any kind, right?
Yeah.
Because up until then, BioWare was really big on the RPGs, and they had Jade Empire, but that was still sort of like a Knights of the Old Republic style game.
And I mean, Mass Effect is basically an RPG, the first one. Like, it's an
yeah,
RPG where you
yeah.
shoot your guns, but
Even the guns don't have ammo. Like it's all based on like how you build your character, which it's weird for Mass Effect. Like you have a character who's supposed to have graduated this specialist training regimen, which is the N7 course, and N7 itself doesn't really mean anything.
They
in terms
start
of
out
what
as
your
this
job is,
piece of
but-
shit. Like,
Yeah, you can't even
they're
aim
basically
your
a
goddamn
rookie.
gun.
I actually Alpha Protocol, which we played for one of our trade-ins, does that really well. So I don't know if we talked about this, but you pick like a specialization when you start the game, and it gives you, I assume every specialization except for the 2 unique ones starts with the same amount of skill points, but they divvy them out automatically, and you can like reassign them if you want. And I think there's a class that starts with that number of skill points, but none of them are spent right away, so you can pick it. But it also has an option called Rookie, where you're like straight out of like spy school or whatever.
Like
you
the
have
academy.
yeah, and well, actually no, you're a CIA agent, but you're like a fresh CIA agent,
green.
and they
you've only
just
been on the job for a few months.
yeah, they like pulled you straight out of the field, and you start with no skill points. That's how I did that playthrough. That's a really cool way to handle that. Mass Effect, it's like your character is supposed to be like this ridiculous hero, and then you kick into the game and he's just garbage.
Now, see, with the new game, it's going to be a little more understandable because you're an explorer, or I think they call it a pathfinder, who does have combat training, but you're not like a military super war hero, which Shepard is. That's, you pick your background. Shepard already has heroic war experience. Shepard's already a veteran. So it's really weird that you can't even like fire more than 3 bullets with your assault rifle before you just go like way all over the place.
Yeah. So basically, the new game is going to be somewhere between Shepard, who is a war hero that sucks at the start of his game, and Isaac Clarke, who is just a regular ass engineer who is murdering aliens by the handful at the start of his game.
Just a dude.
Yeah. Isaac Clarke's just a regular guy, and they're like, here, use this welding tool as a gun, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to slaughter a ton of aliens.
Who knew? Yeah. So it was a little odd with Mass Effect 1, again, just because that was their first attempt at that kind of game. It was really experimental, and that's why it doesn't really stack up game like gunplay wise, at least.
Yeah, it was great when
shooters.
I first played it. But
oh yeah,
going back after playing Mass Effect 2 and 3, it's hard to get back into. After I've gotten used to the conventions of those games, there's you have powers in Mass Effect 1, but they're all pretty much worthless. Like no, there's one. What class is it?
Kind of suck. But I mean, there's the engineer and the sentinel and the infiltrator, and those I think were the tech powers. We had mines.
I can't.
And
Vanguard?
They would do things,
or was that introduced later?
No. They've always had the same.
There's one class in Mass Effect 1 that is like just hands and feet better than any other class, like by far. And I think I can't remember which class it is though.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a few of them because in Mass Effect 1, there's the infiltrator and the soldier, and they both have an ability called immunity. Immunity basically makes you immune to damage. It raises your damage resistance so high, you're pretty much invincible. You can face tank like cannon shells.
Soldier is what I played in Mass Effect 1. That's usually, see, Mass Effect 3 I only played through it once, but the other games I played through them more than once. And I always like to start with like the baseline experience when I play a game like that. Yeah. So like, Soldier is like the class that's between those two. It gets like maybe like a power from tech and a power from biotic, and then it's just good at guns basically.
Well, in Mass Effect 1, soldiers don't have either of those.
Yeah, like in Mass Effect 1, all they have is immunity, I think, right? Yeah. And they don't have any powers.
Well, they have combat power, so they have immunity, and there's a couple other ones like fitness. That might be immunity, actually. That gives you the immunity power. They do have some abilities, but they're all revolving around like pure combat prowess. And they have weapon skills for every weapon type, so they get all the weapon powers as well.
Now, see, I liked that.
And so on.
I liked that, and I wish that they hadn't gotten away from that in the second and third game. Because I don't know about the second one, but I know in the third one that the soldier gets, like, he can, like, dip into both sides of the powers a little bit. Like, he's not great at them, but I'm pretty sure he gets like a couple of powers in Mass Effect 3 that he can use.
Well, there are some more powers. Like there's a concussive shot. I think there's a smoke grenade kind of thing. I can't really remember because I didn't play Soldier in Mass Effect 3 or 2.
I didn't either,
but,
actually. I played.
They do get some abilities like that.
I think I played Vanguard in Mass Effect 3, and that's why I was thinking of. I had Lift and I had like Singularity. Maybe that wasn't Vanguard.
Oh, if it was Singularity, that's the Adept. That was the pure biotic
Adept
class.
is the one I played. Then.
Yeah.
So I think I played that on your recommendation because I played Mass Effect 3 after you had already played through a bunch of it.
I love Adept. Adept is unbelievably overpowered in Mass Effect 1 as well.
Mass Effect 3, it's amazing.
It's really good in 3, kind of shitty in 2, and that's because of the armor system they had in there, which they didn't really think about, I think, and how that would affect biotic classes. They made it so in Mass Effect 2, you have enemies that have these protection layers, like shields or armor or biotic barriers, and your abilities do not work on them. Well, they do, but very, very minimally, unless you actually use the appropriate ability, kind of rock, paper, scissors style, to counter their protection type, which was crappy because for biotics, they had nothing to counter shields. Or, well, they had one armor counter, the warp power, but it was kind of crappy. And you cannot affect enemies with your telekinesis abilities, like lift and push and all those fun ones, unless you remove that. Now, in Mass Effect 1, that wasn't a problem at all. There were enemies with shields, but you could just lift them up. The best combo is if you're out of doors on a planet in Mass Effect 1, you cast lift, and then you do throw on the same enemy, and you will not see them come back down. It's amazing. And you get to a point in Mass Effect 1 where once you have enough skill points invested in your class, your cooldowns are so fast, you have them up all the time. That's another thing that they changed. They had the global cooldown in 2 and 3, which was not a thing in Mass Effect 1.
They that's in 3, I would use lift and then singularity. And singularity would hit all the other enemies that were around, and then that guy that was lifted would just go like drifting off. He was dead. And then I just finish everybody off. I pretty much used the pistol exclusively in Mass Effect 3.
The pistols are really good in those games.
Yeah.
They're really, really reliable.
And I don't remember exactly how the weapon system... I think in Mass Effect 3, your class dictated which weapons you could use.
Yes, that is true.
And I want to say Adept only got like shotgun and pistol.
I think
maybe
Adept
like
has
SMG.
Pistol and SMG. Vanguard was the biotic class with a shotgun and pistol. And then, Mass Effect 2, they introduced the charge ability for Vanguard as well. And that made that class super fun. It was a good class in Mass Effect 1, but it wasn't like crazy ridiculous. It was just a biotic class with a couple biotic powers and shotgun abilities, which was good.
In Mass Effect 1, there was a little bit of distinction between the biotic classes, but not a ton. There was more in the tech classes. Like, the tech classes in Mass Effect 1 were all obviously, they all had specific powers, and you could tell. But I felt like Vanguard and I don't remember all the biotic classes.
Well, there's Vanguard,
because there were only a few biotic powers in Mass Effect 1. So
yeah, there were your basic ones. You got lift, pull, singularity, warp, which was like a basic kind of damage power, and then barrier. I think that was it.
Warp was really good in Mass Effect 3. I don't think that was very good in Mass Effect 1. It was kind of like middling.
It was different. It wasn't. I mean, none of them were projectiles in Mass Effect 1. They were instantly hitting abilities. Warp did a damage over time, and it also weakened the enemy, which you can make it do in Mass Effect probably 2, but also in 3. You can upgrade it with that capability, except it's also projectile, and then it kind of factors into the global cooldown. Something that a lot of people did in Mass Effect 1 was once you had used a certain power enough times and you got the achievement for it, you could then use that power on new characters, regardless of the class. You could pick a bonus power. And what a lot of people would do...
actually, yeah.
Yeah. People who rolled Soldier would often take the warp ability, because you could pop it on a boss or something, give them the damage weakness, and then open up on them with your assault rifle or whatever, and do a ton of damage. That was a pretty popular build. But yeah, it was a little different, mostly because of the change in how biotics were handled or how biotics handled protections. So Adept wasn't really that fun in Mass Effect 2. You basically had to rely on your gun. Whereas in Mass Effect 1, with the exception of some bosses, you could rely almost exclusively on your biotics and be amazing. Yeah. And you couldn't do that in Mass Effect 2 at all. You had to rely on your SMG to whittle down protection first and then open up. And at that point, once the protection is gone, it doesn't matter what you do. They're dead anyway. So
yeah. Mass Effect 3 was a bit better about it than 2, but it was
They
still
were.
like if you were facing an armor enemy, you could kill them with biotic powers in Mass Effect 3, but it would take
Yeah.
a fucking long time. Like
Well, yeah,
it
they made it
was
so you could like psychokinetically affect enemies. So if you threw,
yeah.
push
So
at an enemy, it would
if
knock them
there was
down.
an armored enemy, I would lift them and then shoot them in the face with my pistol until they died.
Yeah,
That was pretty much it.
and that's how
So
you play Adept.
yeah, but I enjoyed Adept. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it in the first game. Um, I played. I'm pretty sure Soldier in the first and the second game.
Yeah.
I might have. I think I did a Vanguard playthrough on the second game as well. Um, I remember charging, and I don't think I played Vanguard in Mass Effect 3. So it would have
Oh,
had
you
to be
should totally
2.
do it. It still had the charge.
Uh,
It was a
I
good
did.
time.
I played Vanguard a lot when we were that little like month window we were playing the multiplayer a
The
lot.
multiplayer. Yeah, yeah.
Because it's great in the multiplayer.
It's good in the lower levels, and maybe some good players are really good with it in like the platinum difficulty. But I never even tried platinum, dude. I couldn't do it.
Oh well, you'll die a
It was
ton if
fun,
you're
but I
just
was
charging
bad.
up to enemies, but it's fun at
Yeah.
least. Uh, do you want to? Because we've talked a lot about like the gameplay systems. We haven't really touched on the story all that much, aside from talking about how Mass Effect 2 was like a weird diversionary.
We could do some more about that if you want.
How do you feel about the story? Like overall, taking all Mass Effect media that you have consumed into, and I know that it's hard to do that because a lot of them, like I don't know about the novels. Do they follow Shepard as well?
No, they're
Okay.
actually intentionally ambiguous because Shepard is supposed to be like you choose your
Yeah.
Shepard. It's not there's not a defined canon for what Shepard is. Um, they touch on Anderson and Saren. One of the novels actually focuses on Anderson and Saren before the events of the first game, before
Now,
Saren
see,
becomes indoctrinated.
I would like to read that because that's one thing that Mass Effect does poorly. Almost no backstory on any of the side characters.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
characters in your party, you get like bare minimum about their background, and like with characters like Liara, like their background only comes into play when it's important to the storyline. Like when you're looking at when you're like doing something related to matriarch Benezia.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Then like Liara will be like, oh, blah blah blah. Here's something that happened to me when I was young. But like, there's almost no exposition on any of the characters, which is like a big no-no when you consider the fact that your character has no set background of their own. So, whose story are you really playing here? You're playing Shepard's story currently, but
Yeah.
it's like you've started the game at like the beginning of the universe. Like there's no past to speak of really. Like you get a couple lines about how like you were a war hero on some planet depending on what choice you pick for your background. But
Yeah.
they it's all about like future thinking forward stuff, and there's no real like background. Like there's so much in that universe that's ripe for like background story stuff.
Now that you mentioned that I think is what I like most about the Mass Effect universe. Not that I like everything about it. I mean, there are some things that they could do some work on, but I think this universe has a ton of potential, is what it is.
It does,
And
and the fact that they wasted 3 full games on Shepard, who is a character that is completely customizable and has no definable past. Like
yeah,
I'm all for character customization in games, but with a game like this, I would almost prefer the character to have like a set canon. And like you get to pick their actions that they take from the moment you take over, obviously. But
yeah,
kind of like Dragon Age 2 did. Like Dragon Age 2 did a lot of things badly, but one thing that it did really well was it had this customizable character. Like the character's appearance and stuff was fully customizable, but they had the framework of a backstory already. So you didn't have to like make stuff up, and it was
yeah. There's no
grounded in
origin.
the story.
Yeah,
But I mean, you could still. The only thing that was could not be changed was the name, basically. Other
yeah.
than that, I mean, it was still your character. You made all the decisions from the point you take control of that character.
I think Hawk was one of like the only good things about Dragon Age 2. I liked Hawk. Hawk was cool.
The combat system in Dragon Age 2 was decent. A lot of
It's
people
alright.
didn't like it because it wasn't the tactical type of combat that Dragon Age 1 had. It was completely different, but I didn't think it was bad. We're not talking about Dragon Age, though. that's a whole other beast because that I don't know about
Well,
that
speaking of
franchise.
that, though, you'll probably hear more about that with the new Mass Effect game because they're not bringing your character to you as an established veteran or anything. You're basically a new guy from the sound of it,
But
and
that makes sense to me.
yeah, it makes more sense because it's going to tell this, like the game is telling the story about how you become a veteran or a hero
Yeah.
or whatever. You're not already that big important person. You're just a colonist.
That's
That's
the
how you
issue.
start.
That's the issue with Mass Effect, and I know why they did it. But your character is like this big war hero, but there's no past to speak of. Like
Yeah.
there's no exposition or backstory about your character's past aside from those simple choices that you make at the beginning of the game that have almost no effect on any storyline in the game. All they affect is like Anderson and Udina are talking, and they like mention those bullet points that you picked, and then like maybe there's a dialogue option somewhere that mentions like, oh, back on the planet that you saved or whatever. That's
Well,
it.
you do get it's very very brief, but at least in the first game there is one section or one little side quest you get based on your backstory. Like if you chose that you were Earthborn and you grew up in a gang, you bump
Yeah.
into a member of your old gang on the Citadel, and they like ask you for money or something. I don't know, or they ask you to bust a guy out of prison. I don't know. I can't remember what it was. But
I don't think there's anything like that in 2 or 3.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't believe there's
how it
any
reflects on
specific
those.
content affected by the choice that you make. And obviously in 2 and 3 you don't really make those choices because you made them in Mass Effect 1. But the problem is like they shouldn't have started with a war hero if they wanted you to build the story of Shepard. Like if you were going to build the story of Shepard, you should have started out as like a private and like prove yourself in combat at the beginning of the first game or something and
Yeah.
get promoted or whatever. But
That whole section on Eden Prime where Jenkins gets killed and you're fighting off the Geth, that should
Yeah.
have been like, okay, you're just a rookie.
Yeah.
Know? And then
'Cause you are
they're
a
like,
rookie
he's
when
the
you
only
play the
person that
game.
survived.
your
Yeah.
character sucks. So like
And they still make you special because you have that encounter with the beacon and it blows up and then it puts all the
Yeah.
protein crap in your brain and they go, oh crap, wow, you survived this. You must be pretty talented. Let's get that crap out of your head and find out what we can do about Sovereign or whatever.
yeah, it's
So,
weird
you know,
to me
that
that they
might have
even
been
like
better.
that they even bring up the fact of your character's past when they have no intention to expand on it and tell you what happened. Like it in a way it almost like overshadows, like you're like, okay, well this stuff only happened to my character because he was a war hero or whatever. So
There's something that Gus from Rooster Teeth mentioned about this very thing, where in Mass Effect 3, you have James Vega is your like stock kind of a soldier, a squad mate,
Yeah.
and like he's talking smack to you in the game, and like who the fuck is this guy? You're Commander Shepard. Right?
yeah.
Not only have you already saved the galaxy like twice, but you also did all this other crap before. Like who is this guy?
Yeah, you've died and come
Yeah.
back to life.
Everybody should know who you are. Everybody should be showing you respect, no matter what you chose in your background. But no, half the people you bump into think you're a piece of crap.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would have made more sense for people to talk down to you at all.
I
if
love
you just started
James
off as a
Vega, by the
nobody.
way.
You know what? People didn't give him enough of a chance. He is
Well,
a pretty good character. Actually,
The problem with James Vega is there's absolutely no explanation about anything related to him in Mass Effect 3 because he's from the comic, right? Was he from a comic or
he was in one of the animations they made. If there was more than
it's
one.
the animation. Like he's like the star of this animation or comic, whatever he was in. His character's like the main character.
Yeah.
And maybe I want to say it was like a companion mobile game or something that he was mentioned in too.
There
Maybe
was, I think, an iOS game.
Maybe
Mass
I'm
Effect
misremembering.
Infiltrator, but I don't know.
But so he's got all this exposition that happens in the piece of media that he is from, and they bring none of that. I mean, like people that are playing Mass Effect 3, maybe like 10% of those people have consumed any Mass Effect media aside from the Mass Effect games in the past. It's just, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So like they expect people to know this character, and nobody's gonna know this character if they haven't read his source material. And then it's gonna be like, why is this character here? Who is he? Why is he important? It's like all irrelevant stuff, really.
No, they did something in Mass Effect 3 that kind of maybe stepped away from that even more. It wasn't like this all the time, but in Mass Effect, you can walk around your ship on the Normandy and you can, talk to your squad mates, and
Yeah.
have a conversation with them. Even if it's reiterating what you've already heard from them, you can go back and listen to the choices again and again. At least, man, I haven't played Mass Effect 3 in a while. I'm trying to remember if this even happens at all. But in Mass Effect 3, you can go and press A on your squad mates in the ship, and they'll give you like a one-off kind of like just a line.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can actually open a conversation with them too. But people always talk about like the thing with Garrus, how he never has anything to say because of blah 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 weapon calibrations, right? You'd run into stuff like that where your squad mates just either didn't want to talk to you, or no, that might have been Mass Effect 2. Shit, I can't remember. Anyway, and it was good and bad because it kind of stepped away from what you were talking about, but it also meant that your squad mates were moving around the ship, which is cool. Like there was one scene you could potentially bump into where James Vega and Kaidan are playing poker.
Yeah.
And you just listen to them have this like brief exchange where like James is taking them to school, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I want
James
more
is
stuff like
also
that where they have lives.
When you go to the Citadel, James is always at the poker table in the like lower ward of the Presidium or something.
Yeah.
And if you go up, he's like, "Oh, come on, get out of here, man! I don't need my commander around while I'm playing cards." James Vega, I love James Vega because he's the only character that isn't like hanging off every fucking word that your character says. Like all the other like party members and stuff. I guess Liara's a little bit like this in Mass Effect 3. She's like got this weird distant thing going on. But like they're like puppies when you come to talk to them, Shepard. Like your party members are like, "Oh, Shepard, hey!" And they have like all this stuff to say to you.
They get really excited.
Well, like you come up to Vega, and half
the
the time Vega's an asshole to you when you try to talk to him, and he has like only a few words to say. And Vega there's a animated feature film called Mass Effect Paragon Lost.
That's what it is.
James Vega is the main character in that, and it's like a massive like. It's his story about what he was doing during the whole collectors thing, basically. So he's fighting collectors and stuff in this movie. And this has all this exposition on his character that just does not get brought over to Mass Effect 3 at all. And, I mean, how many people watched this fucking Mass Effect cartoon movie? Very
Probably
few,
not
I
that
would
many.
say.
It wasn't very well animated, unfortunately. So.
Oh, I don't see the animation, but I see some of the stills, and it looks like an anime from, like, the early 2000s.
It looks like a budget anime from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
I wouldn't mind seeing it just because I like James Vega, but I'll probably never watch it. I say I'd like to see it, but I'm probably never going to watch it.
I wish there was all this exposition, but I don't actually want to see the thing.
Well,
I can't say I blame you, though.
Dead and gone at this point. It's been too long. So, like, Mass Effect 3 was weird to me because it's got a few new characters that get like almost no storyline, and then all these existing characters, and they bring back all these existing characters, and most of them just don't want anything to fucking do with you. So like it's this weird like they bring back all these characters for these weird cameos, or in the case of Ashley, looking like crackheads.
Yeah, that was weird. I think if you like Ashley at all, I don't. But if you like her, you should nuke her on Vermeer because you're sparing her from that fate, from becoming that goddamn monster.
It's so weird to me how significantly worse both Ashley and Miranda look in Mass Effect 3 compared to Mass Effect 2. Like, how did we take a downgrade there? Miranda's forehead in Mass Effect 3 is just a fucking billboard. You could rent ad space on that thing. It was big in Mass Effect 2. But in Mass Effect 3, it is like fucking huge. Her forehead is the Mass Effect.
Even in Mass Effect 2, I mean, look at the woman that she's based on. That woman is beautiful, okay? She is gorgeous.
They didn't do a good job replicating.
Yeah,
but
they're not too good at that.
At least she doesn't look like a fucking mutant in Mass Effect 2. They like focused all their blast processing and fucking polygons on her ass in Mass Effect 3, and her face she looks like she hasn't slept in years. Her forehead's fucking huge. Ashley has like these massive bags under her eyes. It looks like she just got done with like a week-long bender.
Which
Um,
she's trying really hard to cover up with tons of makeup and a perm. Which, by the way, is really weird because in Mass Effect 1, she says some line about never being caught in a skirt, and then that exact thing actually
yeah,
happens.
in Mass Effect 1, she does not wear makeup. She
Uh-uh.
looks really plain in Mass Effect 1.
She
Like,
might have a little bit, but she worked like very, very minimal.
yeah, she's not
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's hard to tell ugly. Like, I'm not a guy that is into cartoon girls, so it's hard to tell ugly or, but I wouldn't call her like hot in Mass Effect 1. She's like she's like a female soldier. She's more
Yeah.
concerned with her gunplay than her looks.
She's what you'd expect a female soldier to look like, which is just a human.
Yeah.
Like a person, and
And
that's
then
it.
Mass Effect 3, she's like straightened her hair out and she's wearing like thick ass eye makeup. She's got these huge fucking lips.
There is a word for that, and it's called bimbofication. And this is exactly what happened to Ashley. I know maybe there's someone on the writing team that's into that. I don't know.
She's a completely different character in Mass Effect 3. She's dumb. She makes stupid choices. She's all like dolled up for whatever reason. I don't know what they did. Like,
man, they liked Caden. I mean, they as in like the Mass Effect writers. I feel like they liked Caden a lot more than Ashley,
Yeah.
regardless of what the fans thought. Because Caden got a great treatment.
just save Caden.
He was just the same old self.
Yeah.
They actually promoted him. Caden outranks Commander Shepard in Mass Effect 3. He's a major. And Commander Shepard never gets promoted other than becoming a Spectre, obviously. But
once he's
like,
in the you usually don't get
theory of the the Systems Alliance structure.
Usually when you die in combat, you don't get a promotion, even if you do get brought back to life later through magical science.
Yeah, like they should have posthumously promoted him to fucking general or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, Caden has that, and he's the commander of his own military or his own like covert biotic squad, which is really cool. You don't see any of that
now.
But it's true.
I had Ashley alive for my Mass Effect 3 playthrough, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Does Caden become the Spectre instead of Ashley in Mass Effect 3? Because Ashley becomes a Spectre. Well, I guess she's not guaranteed to become a Spectre, but
I think man, I can't remember if you can choose or not, because there is a situation in which you can actually kill that character based on how that situation plays out with Udina. But yeah, he can become a Spectre, or he's like Udina makes him into a Spectre so that he has a new
that's what he does with Ashley.
Puppet.
Yeah, he basically
he does that with either of them.
Basically turns them into a bodyguard because he knows that Shepard's onto him.
Yeah.
Or that Anderson's onto him. I guess Shepard's not really onto him at any point.
That was a weird thing too. That whole thing with Udina, that just kind of came out of left field. It didn't really make sense to me. Like, because Udina was always all about let's get humanity first, but he was an asshole, but he was still a good guy.
I feel like Mass Effect 3 might have had completely different writing team than the first two Mass Effect games.
Well, I can tell you the lead writer was different from the lead writer of Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1, the lead writer was Drew Karpyshyn. I think that's how it's pronounced. Mass Effect 2, he shared that role with Mac Walters.
Well,
and Mass
Effect 2 is not important to the canon, though. So
okay, so Mass Effect 1 was Drew. Mass Effect 3 was Mac Walters, who did kind of take over the lead writer position towards the end of Mass Effect 2's development. So at that point, it was a totally different kind of thing from Mass Effect 1. And the story of Mass Effect 1, it's very, very classic sci-fi space opera.
Oh yeah, Mass Effect 1 is a space opera. It's like the penultimate space opera.
Yeah. And it doesn't do anything too unique, I think, but what it did do worked really well. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so popular. The
story in 1 is
It took a formula that worked and just, knocked it out of the park. I thought it was great. That's actually that's my biggest problem with the story of the franchise, is that they ruined the Reapers. And the Reapers were the coolest part of the story of Mass Effect 1 by far. They were really cool. They were these unknowable, huge, eldritch machine gods, and they were so far above you. They look at you like ants. They don't even have time to talk to you. In fact, the fact that they even talked to Shepard was unbelievable. And Sovereign ends that conversation by saying something like, "This conversation is over," and then that's it. That is all you hear from him for the whole game. He doesn't taunt you. He doesn't do any of that Diablo 3 bullshit where he's just popping in with a hologram saying, "Oh, my mortars will kill you now." He doesn't do anything like that.
And that's exactly what they did in Mass Effect 2. Harbinger, are you kidding me? The guy was a Saturday morning cartoon villain. He sucked. He was terrible. He totally ruined the concept of what the Reapers were. And they knew that. You know how I know that, Tony? You know how I know that? Because in Mass Effect 3, Harbinger was there, and he didn't say a goddamn word. He was silent.
But
and
Matt,
they know this.
Assuming direct control is such a funny meme now.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And, you know, I don't even remember what he said at this point, but it was stuff like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you this time, Shepard. Oh,
all I remember is assuming direct
I'm so
control.
much better than you." Yeah, like he, you know what? That's even the worst part of it. It wasn't even the talking. It's the fact that he cared enough about Shepard to take a personal role in every fight you have. That was dumb. That ruined the Reapers. They were so cool until Mass Effect 2. It doesn't even matter that the boss was like a human baby Reaper thing. That was stupid, but that wasn't the worst part. No, it was Harbinger. And they tried to come back with it with Mass Effect 3. Definitely was a better Reaper experience than Mass Effect 2, but ugh.
In 3, and I mean, obviously they had to do something like this because they had to wrap up the story with the Reapers. But like,
yeah,
we go from in Mass Effect 1, we can't even like fathom their existence, much less how to deal with them.
That's what's so cool about them, yeah.
And like, they don't give a shit about us. And then in Mass Effect 3, suddenly they're wiping us out, which like, I guess realistically that's them on their death march through the galaxy.
Well, yeah, like we knew that was going to happen, but it's weird that like we're engaging them in battle. Now, I mean, that's kind of explained over the course of the series, so yeah, we know, of course, we're going to have a big fight with them. But every cycle up until then, it's kind of implied, or actually described, I think, by Vigil, who you talked to in Mass Effect 1, the AI guy. Usually what they do is they just immediately arrive at the Citadel and shut down the relay network, and then the whole galaxy is just fucked.
Yeah, they changed their mind on this one, though.
Well,
in Mass Effect
the
3...
screwed that up.
Yeah.
They messed that up with the Keeper signal and all that, so that Sovereign had to get Saren to go and do what he did in the first game, so that they could open up the Citadel relay and then bring the Reapers in.
Yeah.
And that plan didn't work because Shepard is Shepard.
Yeah,
but
Shepard's this magic man.
Yeah, he's just amazing.
You know, war hero.
Yeah,
that's what we know about. That's what we know about Shepard's past, and that's probably all we'll ever know.
Probably.
I'm glad that they're stepping away from Shepard. 3 was just like, in 3 you hear about like, it's like each time you talk to a race, you hear about like one planet in that race's system that got wiped out by the Reapers. It's like, oh, this planet got fucked up, and then like every human outpost is getting trashed. Like the Reapers, they just kind of want to scare the other races, but they're out to like destroy the humans. I mean, obviously
they did attack the homeworlds of everybody actually.
Yeah.
But the Turians actually fought back. I don't think... I can't remember the name. Palavin, I think, is the name of the Turian homeworld. And I don't believe that homeworld is ever actually taken by the Reapers. I think they hold them off.
No, you go to it, I think, and help them hold them off, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have a mission there. You have a mission on Thessia, the Asaria world, but that didn't go so well. Thessia just gets kind of fucked.
Yeah. Kind of like Earth. You know, Earth, where Commander Shepard comes from, but we can't deal when it comes to the Reapers.
I did like the start of Mass Effect 3 where you're going to talk to like the human council. I can't remember what they were, and then you're in the middle of talking to them, and all of a sudden it's, oh shit, Reapers, and they're here, and you gotta run. Oh yeah, that thing that I said was going to happen, it's happening right now.
Yeah. I don't know. Mass Effect 3 felt really like disjointed in terms of story. Not just compared to Mass Effect 1, but even within its own canon. It was this weird like they really, I feel like they wanted to tell more story, but they realized that they had to wrap it up in this game. So they're like, well, shit, the game's almost over. Let's just push all this shit together and, you know, push it at the person. Like, it had those weird, like, using, I guess it was Legion if you made the right choices, using that Geth to, like, get inside of, like, the fucking computer systems and do all these weird, like, computer mini games. It was like, what is the relevance of this? They could have cut all those gameplay sections out because they were boring. They were all the same. You had to do it, like, 5 times during that whole section, and it was the exact same thing every time. They could have easily consolidated that into just a cutscene where, like, Shepard, like, closes his eyes, and then when he opens them again, he's got that knowledge that he needed from inside the... It was like the Geth's hive mind that he was inside of.
You're inside... I can't remember what they're called, but there's a word for it.
and you're inside like this Geth sort of computer system, I guess, whatever. Yeah.
And it's like it's basically them putting like the flimsiest gameplay excuse they can around just a hyper dump of information. So like they're like, we really need to get this information to the player as fast as we can. Let's make him jump through these weird on rails hoops, and every time he does anything, we'll hit him with a minute-long cutscene. So like you blow up a target in there, and like Legion's talking. I don't know if it was Legion. It was a Geth that you.
I think it's implied that it was Legion. They never say it, but
I mean, obviously
the
Legion is
rifle the Legion uses, and
obviously Legion is just a husk, and is part of a hive mind. But
well, the thing with Legion is that it is supposed to be a Geth that has like 1,000 individual Geth inside of him. So he is a collective mind.
He is a Geth hive mind, but he's not part of the overall. He has his own like rogue section of Geth hive mind. I keep using hive mind because I don't remember exactly what it's called, but
that was weird because the Geth that you fight in Mass Effect 1 are revealed to be part of a rogue faction themselves that worship the Reapers, and there's actually lots of real Geth out there that are totally peaceful and just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And that's where Legion comes from that faction.
That's right, yeah. He's not a rogue faction. They're the rogue faction.
They're the heretics, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like all of that section did not need to exist. They just really wanted to get all that story packed into like a 30-minute segment so that they could continue progressing along. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like there's all these side missions that just amount to like you running around an area for 20 minutes, shooting a few enemies and getting like a ton of cutscenes thrown at you.
That was their attempt to bring back the planetary exploration, I think, even though it wasn't anywhere near that. But those were the N7 missions. And the specific side missions where instead of having the same prefab base, you have actually a designed level, but it amounted to that. Like you might get a bit of intel or a weapon upgrade at the end or something like that. I think what was I going to say? The thing that bugged me most about that whole Geth situation, or not really bugged, I actually think it's kind of funny, is that you can do all that work on Rannoch and actually foster peace between the Geth, you know where I'm going with this. Yeah. And then you can just choose the destroy option at the end and kill all of them anyway. Yeah. All that work for nothing. Doesn't matter.
Now see, I didn't pick that option because it would have killed my sexy Edie bot too. Which is another... So, we're running short on time, but let's talk about the weird sexual personification of Edie.
I wish she had just stayed as the ship. I don't care what she looks like as a robot body, but I didn't like the fact that she became a squad mate. She should have been the ship.
I liked her as a squad mate, just for like I liked her abilities as a squad mate. I think she shared abilities with Liara.
Well, no, Liara was biotic. She would have had tech abilities.
Yeah, sorry, not.
But,
there's like because there's maybe it was Legion that she shared abilities with. I want to say that there's like two characters. On each side has, there's biotic side characters and tech side characters. And each of those, a character will have an analog of another character that you can use if you really want that character's skills, but want a different character in your party. So
yeah, like they would shuffle them a bit, but
so like options. I think Garrus and Ashley both had the same skills. Maybe like one different skill. Maybe I'm thinking I might just have my characters mixed up completely. But
no, well, you're not wrong, because Mass Effect 2, at least, it had a really big cast, right? That was the biggest of the three. There were 12 or 13 or something like that. So with only 3 different disciplines, combat, tech, and biotics, you're going to have some samey feeling characters for sure. Usually the characters would all have one...
it was Ashley and Jacob. They share, I think, identical
They're both soldiers. Skills. Yeah. Well, actually, no, sorry. Jacob's a Vanguard, technically. He doesn't have a charge, but he's
a Vanguard, but he doesn't have any biotics. Of, like, what you would think would be the classic Vanguard.
Well, he doesn't have
he
doesn't charge at all. He actually has, I think, Barrier and, Lift or something. He's got one of those.
Why not?
He's a guy with a shotgun and a couple of biotic powers, and that's it.
He's useless. I didn't use him a single time. Jacob is also potentially the most boring character in the game. So
he is boring, but I think he's actually a good character in terms of how he's written and stuff. I didn't use him, but
he's one of the most consistent characters where he never really him and James actually, they are written really consistently. So they will always have like the same kind of basic opinions on certain things.
Yeah.
Not the same as each other, but I mean like their opinions don't change very much. There's no real like plot holes with their character where like you'll do something and they'll approve of it when realistically through past interactions they should have disproved of it or something. But God, he's so boring. He is the everyman. More so
He
than
really is.
more so than
More than
James
Vega.
Vega.
Yeah.
He is like he's meant to be the character that you assume he's meant to be a character that you kind of can relate to. But I mean, in a game like Mass Effect, he's just fucking boring. I mean, we've got all these like crazy aliens and like
he's basically Hawk from Dragon Age, because Hawk was just a guy that got caught up in something. Pretty much the same with Jacob. He was just a dude that worked on the station where Shepard was being resurrected. That's it.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of he was alive during that, and I think he was Miranda's friend or something. And then they just kind of, all right, well, let's go. It's time to leave, and now I'm on your squad, and that was it. So he was, not too interesting to talk to, I guess, but he was a good character in the sense that he felt pretty realistic.
Yeah. But he didn't have enough of a catch. Like Miranda's a human, but she's got like fucking daddy issues and like crazy magic powers.
In Mass Effect 2. Just so you know, they all do, but different flavors, but it's all there. Yeah. He, Miranda had that whole thing with being genetically designed to be perfect. Yeah, can't even do the friggin' biotic section at the end. You useless one. That was actually pretty funny. Of course, you choose the Asari, but yeah. Or
Mass Effect 2. Despite the fact that Mass Effect 2 had the weird daddy issue things, I feel like a lot of the characters from Mass Effect 2 were really good. Was Jack in Mass Effect 1? I don't think so. Jack is an awesome character.
Everybody likes Jack. She's pretty popular, yeah.
Jack is one of the coolest characters because she's not like the weird, like hypersexualized character that Miranda is. She obviously still has sexuality as a character, she's like almost topless. But she's totally like this badass, like crazy, biotic, like fucking psychopath.
She's supposed to be crazy. I actually wish that she was crazier than she actually turned out to be.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that she wasn't actually like, whoa, psycho.
Well, she grows to be less crazy around characters that she trusts, which doesn't really make any sense when you talk about crazy people.
Well, I think she's not crazy. She's more like she's just angry and rebellious, but I wouldn't call her crazy. They paint her as like, oh, here's a person who we have to lock up because she's a psychopath. But she's really not.
She should have been a
dangerous,
psychopath.
But
yeah.
I think she would have been more fun if she was a psychopath.
Thane was an awesome character.
Thane was pretty cool.
Very
sad. Very sad.
Lots of characters in Mass Effect 2 that you have to do really specific conditions to bring them back in Mass Effect 3. And even then, they're only like cameos, which is real unfortunate because they were like the best characters.
I would like to have another Drell. I thought that they have a whole culture that you can find out about too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
They live on the same world as the Hanar, or the Hanar kind of brought them into their world, the jellyfish dudes.
Yeah.
Because something happened to their world and it was inhospitable, or I can't remember. But it's not a symbiotic relationship, but it sort of is. And apparently, by the way, the Hanar are unbelievable assassins in underwater environments. Like that's their thing. But you never see them there. You just see them on land, so they're pretty slow.
There's so much like awesome potential for this universe. Like some of the races are so like really cool and unique. Like the Elcor, the Volus, like all these like the Volus are like goblins in Warcraft lore. They're very obviously not meant to be warriors. Like they're fat, squat. They have to wear rebreathers on their face everywhere they go. They can't say a fucking sentence without having to stop to breathe. But they're like,
I get that.
They're genius merchants and stuff, which is like how goblins were originally in Warcraft before they turned them into a playable race for whatever reason.
Yeah, the Volus are super cool. They actually they designed the galactic economy that all the Citadel races use.
Yeah, like
they know all the ins and outs of it. That's why you have guys working for like the Shadow Broker and I guess like being stockbrokers and stuff.
Yeah,
you always see Volus in those roles. They have they live in an ammonia-based environment, I think, which is why they wear the suits. There's a lot of stuff like that.
They probably stink.
Actually, they probably smell
like ammonia.
I don't really want to get into how certain characters in Mass Effect smell, because that's already been thoroughly discussed by the Mass Effect fan base to death.
Has it?
Disturbingly so, yeah.
Am I gonna have to? I'm gonna have to look into this, aren't I?
Google it. Let's not mention it on the show. It's pretty weird, but Google it when you're
Okay.
alone with nobody in the room with you. I did want to say that the Mass Effect universe, when we mentioned earlier how it has so much potential, the reason that I believe that is because, at least in Mass Effect 1, what the writing team did was they came up with a concept, like an idea. And that idea was element 0. They say, okay, we have this substance, and here are the rules for this thing. This is what it does.
Which,
And
by the way, I don't think mentioned a single time in Mass Effect 2 or 3.
Probably not. It is mentioned a lot in not only the codex entries, but you actually see it mentioned in the game world in Mass Effect 1, how EZO works.
It's like midichlorians from Star Wars.
They
just wrote it out.
It does.
Yeah.
But what they did with that, though, is they extrapolated that into all these different technologies, but because they made the set of rules for that substance first, they can say, okay, well, we can actually use these rules. You can make a shield from this. And this is how we accelerate projectiles. And this is how we go faster than light.
Yeah.
And this is how we do all these other technologies. And that's what makes, for me at least, that's what makes the Mass Effect universe feel really cool. And I'll say believable. It's not realistic, but it's believable. Because it actually follows its own rules, which is really cool. That actually kind of bugs me with the Mass Effect 2 and 3 games, because with the way biotics work, how they're projectile based. And it's not just because that wasn't how it was in Mass Effect 1, but because of how they
They're
defined
psychic
the rules.
powers. Why would a psychic power be a fucking projectile?
Yeah, why is it an energy ball that comes out of your hands?
I
That
mean,
doesn't make any sense.
Psychic powers were projectiles in Earthbound, but that game came out like in the fucking 80s. So, I mean, come on, we're in the 2000s here.
And that game has different rules anyway. It's not element 0. It's psychic. It's whatever, you know? But I love that they stuck to that. And you can even, like, they even describe space flight and space combat accurately. How they have to have these massive projectiles, and that you can accelerate, you know, something the size of a dime to a fraction of light speed using element 0 as kind of the vehicle for that. And it'll impact with the force of a nuke. Like, it's just physics, right? I thought that was so cool about the first game, and it's kind of still present in the second one and the third one, but not to the same degree at all.
It feels like there was definitely, I mean, obviously the lead writers changed, but it feels like there was a big shift in the writing team.
Definitely.
Between the first and the second, and then between the second and the third. They kind of loosely all take place in the same canon, but they all feel like completely different games. Like, 2 doesn't feel like it fits in with 1 at all. 3 obviously doesn't really fit in with 2. 3 feels more like it should have been the successor to 1.
Yeah.
And 2 is like just this completely different thing. But they basically took all this world building that was done in the first one and just were like, fuck it, who cares? Yep. Nobody cares about that. They just want to shoot aliens, right?
The biggest example of that is the ammo system. And everybody complained about this when Mass Effect 2 first showcased that it was going to do this. Now, I'm not saying that having that ammo system is necessarily better or worse. That's a matter of opinion. But they basically said, because, you know, in Mass Effect 1, how the weapons worked was you didn't have ammunition in the same sense that we have it today. You had a block of solid metal inside the gun, and your weapon would use lasers to shave off a tiny, tiny microscopic piece and then accelerate it to near light speed, or like really, really fast. And it would still do as much damage as, you know, hitting someone with a chemical propelled bullet, like from today's weaponry, right?
Yeah.
And that's another example of, like, fucking they stuck to their guns with that game, man. But because of that, the weapons had basically unlimited ammo, nearly unlimited ammo. You would almost never ever run out of ammunition. You never have to replace that ammo block in the lifetime of the gun, because you could fire it so many times. And there's actually stories, you can ask Rex about this time that he fought, I think, Arya in Mass Effect 2. They fought so long that they ran out of ammo. And, like, knowing that fact lends impact to that story. You go, holy shit, that's a lot of fighting, because I understand how these guns work. So Mass Effect 2 comes around, and the design team for that game decided, okay, we want to have bullets. We want magazines. We want reloading. We want that. And the reason they gave was that they wanted to add more tension to fights, which I think is bullshit. But that was the reasoning. That's what they decided to do. And they hand-waved it in the game by saying, well, they're, you know, the tool, the Omni tool technology kind of developed to a point where people were always getting their weapons overloaded. So now you just pop the heat sink out and put a new one in. and keep firing to get around that. And there are so many holes in that explanation. I'm not even going to get into them because that's going to be a whole other fucking podcast, okay? But that is the biggest example of them just kind of getting pretty lax on the universe they established, that lore, and kind of just stepping away from it for the sake of getting the Call of Duty audience, which you can quote them on.
The weirdest thing is, like, they make all these changes that maybe, like, if they were for gameplay, like, you know, if a choice is gonna hamper the gameplay, then obviously you have to change it so that your gameplay isn't shit. But nothing, like, the fact that like, you can't tell me that people would prefer to have to reload their gun constantly than to just kind of be wary of it overheating. Like, who wants to have to micromanage their shooting game?
Why would you not
more?
want unlimited ammo?
Yeah. There's a reason that there were unlimited ammo cheat codes in all of the games that came out in, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. It's because people wanted infinite fucking ammo.
Yep.
And, like, it's not like the fact that you only have to worry about your gun overheating just takes away any, like, you still have to worry about the gun overheating. And especially with assault rifles, that can happen real fast.
Now, that was actually probably the best part of Mass Effect 1 in terms of the gunplay, that you could modify your guns, and when you got the really good end-game guns, you could modify them so that they never overheated. Yeah. You could fire them as much as you want, but at that point, you're supposed to be super powerful. You're at max level, you get in the best gear, okay, it should be really good, right?
Yeah.
So that's excusable to me. I think they felt like the combat just wasn't as tight as they wanted it to be, and they kind of looked at the game and said, well, they do their systems this way.
Call of Duty has ammo.
Yeah.
Let's put ammo in our game. That's a downgrade to me, to go from a system that is fun and rewarding without making the game a cakewalk. Because Mass Effect 1 was not an easy game, even though, you know, you had infinite fucking ammo.
You start that game on, I don't even think you can do shit. Well, Insanity, that's the highest difficulty. Even if you start that on Veteran, no, there's one in between the two of them, might be Hardcore, something like that. But that's a hard game. When you have no gear and you're starting brand new, you got to be careful in that game, or you know, it's hard.
Like, this is not, you don't balance a game by making the enemies weaker and making the guns better. And in contrast, you don't balance a game by making the guns weaker and the enemies stronger, which is what it felt like they did in Mass Effect 2. They made the guns shittier because you got to reload, you got to worry about ammo, and the enemies are harder because of their stupid fucking resistances. So, like, you can't even just say, well, fuck the guns, I don't care about the clips, I'm just going to use my powers, because that's not how it works. One of the enemies is immune to your powers, so...
Yeah, so fuck you.
No matter if you're tech or biotic, there's an enemy that is not affected by your powers, so...
Yeah.
Like, it's just a poor balancing job, and... Like, really, my biggest complaint is the story stuff. Like, they had, like, the building blocks of, like, this amazing universe in one, and they basically just fucking threw it out in Mass Effect 2 and 3. In Mass Effect 3, it's like, oh, we're humans, the Volus and the Elcor, these are just joke characters, these races are here for comic relief only, so that's what the Volus and the Elcor were. They were like the fucking two stooges in Mass Effect 3. There's, like, always an Elcor and a Volus together, and they're always, like, making fun of each other and just bullshitting around. Like, they're not serious races whatsoever in Mass Effect 3.
Oh, and you know what the worst part of that was? I would have loved to go to the Elcor homeworld and actually see these guys, like, doing their daily routine. There is a mission, a side mission, where you can send an agent, or you can do something. You can go to that world, but you don't actually go there. You don't. It just kind of happens off screen, and then you get a little notification that says, "Oh yeah, we rescued the Elcor ambassador from the Elcor homeworld. It's done. Thank you."
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah. Now, I think all these problems with the story for the whole series, I think that they realize that, and the reason I think that is because the new game takes place in a whole different fucking galaxy.
They were like, not only are we getting away from Shepard, we're just gonna scrap the whole fucking thing.
This, I think, because they'll never admit this, never ever, but this is
their
way of saying, let's just kind of forget that happened and just start over, let's do another one.
I mean,
I think that's what this is.
As much as I think it was shitty that they, like, threw away all those story elements, I understand that they cannot acknowledge that that was the wrong choice. It's publicity suicide to do something like that.
Oh, yeah.
you can acknowledge like that you screwed up, like if there was a bug in the game or something, or like the Destiny makers are like, okay, we didn't do all that great in the first year of Destiny, but we're gonna fix that.
Yeah,
But
or if you're Warner Brothers with Arkham Knight, you just get, okay, let's just not sell that for a while and fix this, and then we'll resell it again. Yeah.
but like with Mass Effect, I mean, we're so far past the timeline at this point that like if you were to announce that, people who like maybe enjoyed the game will like they'll like take a second look at it and maybe they'll decide that they didn't like it all that much or something, and it's going to be real bad publicity. It's too late at this point.
And it'll impact sales of the new game too.
Yeah.
Whether people consciously realize it or not, it will lower your opinion of BioWare in general and make you less likely to buy Andromeda.
Yeah, it's too
And
late.
they don't want to do that.
It's too late for them to come out and say, "Hey, we screwed up."
Yeah.
On the story stuff. Like, no good would come of it at this point. Everybody that's played it knows that they screwed up on it, so they don't need to acknowledge it.
I would love in 15 years,
Man.
after the series has run its course, there'll be a documentary about it, okay? And it'll be all this behind the scenes, like, airing of the dirty laundry, and you'll have tons of ex-BioWare employees going, yeah, well, we told Casey it wasn't a good idea, but he just didn't want to listen.
Man,
I would love for that to happen,
You know-
in a long time.
we spent a whole lot of this cast shit-talking Mass Effect 2 and 3 when we
It's fair to point out that we like these games. We like them. We enjoy them.
I
but-
expected this to be a thing where we were like singing the praises of this series, and we spent pretty much the entire podcast singing Mass Effect 1 its praises and shit-talking Mass Effect 2 and 3.
Okay, so with that in mind, let me point out I do enjoy the gameplay of Mass Effect 3 probably the most. I don't like that there's no Mako. You know, that's obviously a good part of Mass Effect. Shit, I'm doing it again. But the gunplay and the combat, I think, was definitely the
It's
best Mass
obviously
Effect 3.
the most
Even
refined
without-
gameplay-wise.
It's the most refined. They've had, you know, I think it was probably 6 or 7 years by that point of developing for Mass Effect. So they knew how to finally do a proper shooter. Definitely liked it better than Mass Effect 2. That's where they were trying the whole Call of Duty thing. It didn't really go over so well. Mass Effect 3, you know, they introduced the melee attacks and they made combat, you know, you can dodge around and roll and you have a lot more freedom of movement. Definitely enjoyed the combat of that the most. And I feel like the facial animations were improved in Mass Effect 3 compared to the first two games, which for me is a really big deal. I don't know, everybody, you know, there's lots of funny faces in Mass Effect. But, they're not exactly well known for doing good expressions and stuff. But it's coming along. I think they're improving, and hopefully we'll see a lot of that in the new game too.
Yeah, I actually, I said at the beginning of this that I think Mass Effect 2 is my favorite. The gameplay obviously has some flaws. I actually like the story, and I think it's because it's so like weirdly removed from the first one.
Well,
So like,
Mass Effect 2, it's all about the characters, really. It's
Yeah.
not really. I mean, it's about the collectors, but nobody cares about that. Everybody cares about your crew in that
Yeah.
game, which is
And
also something they're bringing back in Andromeda.
2 is
more of a
where
character
you
focus.
2 has the most character exposition, where you're like actually learning about these characters and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you spend the majority of the game just getting your squad. That's
Yeah.
what it's about. Yeah.
I mean, Mass Effect 2 had the specific missions for each squad mate that you would do to like solidify your bond with them, basically.
Yep.
I don't think 3 had that. I don't think 3 had any character-specific missions, did it?
I actually can't remember. It might have.
I don't know.
I'm really not sure.
They must not have been that important if we both can't remember them. So, but I think I like Mass Effect 2. I like Mass Effect 2 overall the best. Mass Effect 1 story the best, and Mass Effect 3 gameplay the best. And I feel like 2 kind of like blended those, so it didn't do either of them amazing, but it did both of them pretty good for me. 1, the gameplay wasn't that. I didn't really enjoy the gameplay of 1 all that much, and the story of 3 was just like a clusterfuck.
Yeah. You know, 2 for me was like the weird middle child. I feel like it kind of tried to do some things right. For me, at least gameplay-wise, it didn't really do anything right. I thought there were some attempts there that maybe could have been better thought out. The things that they tried new in Mass Effect 2, I think they did a lot better in Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3, for me, is probably the best in terms of the gunplay and the powers.
Oh, yeah.
Your abilities. I think Mass Effect 1 is my favorite in terms of just the story was great, the atmosphere, the way the Reapers were presented to you. It was just a good ride, start to finish. And
It's
it
also
had the,
you have to consider obviously the fact that when it came out, it was fresh and new. This was like one of the first space games really on the market where you were playing like a character in space as opposed to like, you know, like an RTS in space.
Or a
Shit,
space
that.
life sim, like free space.
Yeah.
Oh, that was something I was going to mention earlier. I don't know. Have you ever played Descent Free Space?
No.
Okay, so this is I'll do this really quick. This is just a series of space sim shooters, mission based. So you have your sorties, and then you finish and you win, and then you're back. It's not an open world thing like some of the upcoming games, like Freelancer or Star Citizen. It's not like those. But in Free Space, you have an enemy who the main enemy in this series, and this is a spoiler if you've not played it, who are basically the Reapers. Okay, and they're called the Shivans. But this is a game where they took that concept of the unknowable, super powerful alien race and ran with it the whole fucking way. And I have to tell you, Tony, Free Space, the first game, because there's two, Free Space 1 does not end with you beating the Reapers. No. It ends with you barely fending off an attack on Earth, which also results in Earth being cut off from the rest of the galaxy. This is not a happy ending. It's a Pyrrhic victory, okay? Free Space 2 ends with you running away from the Shivans with your tail between your legs as they detonate a fucking star. Okay? And they never talk to you. They never shit talk you. They never try to be like morally superior to you. They just kick the shit out of you from start to finish. And that was why they're just a way better version of the Reapers than the actual Reapers that we got. And every time I talk about this with someone, I always bring up the fucking Shivans because they are the best example of this kind of eldritch, unknowable, super powerful foe. They never are brought down to the level of the player. Never. You can destroy, their fighter craft and stuff in the campaign, but it's not. You're making such a small dent in their forces that they don't even care.
Yeah.
They're so far out of your league, and that's what the Reapers should have been all the way through. And unfortunately, they were not.
The third game humanized them too much because obviously you had to beat them at the end, or.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in all the endings you beat them technically.
You win those individual fights, and yeah, you do really beat them at the end of the third game.
Yeah.
Like it's implied that they are gone for good.
I don't think there's a bad ending to Mass Effect 3, but you reach the point where you're like, well, these guys were like, it was unfathomable that we'd even be able to fight them in the first game, and now one guy is beating.
Yeah.
So
there's
sure.
an ending introduced. I think they added it with the extended cut, where if you just refuse to choose any of them, then you actually do, like, they win. They do their steamroll over the galaxy, they kill everybody, and all that you have accomplished is that you leave a message behind for the next cycle, and hopefully they'll beat them. That's like the bad end. And then there's various degrees of the different endings. Like if you didn't have enough points in Mass Effect 3 and you chose the destroy ending, you destroy all the Reapers, but Earth is also completely fucked and will never recover. Whereas if you have enough points, you destroy all the Reapers and the Geth, but Earth is left relatively intact. So there's some variants like that, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
That is pretty much it. It's a fitting way to go out talking about endings. We ran a little over. I figured we
as usual
would.
pretty par for the course.
Yeah, so that was us talking about Mass Effect 3. Covered most of the stuff that we didn't like about it and some of the stuff that we liked.
Couple things.
So the next podcast is going to be a normal one. We are going to finish up our trade-ins on Oddworld Abe's Odyssey and Tomb Raider, and then we are going to go a bit more freeform with it, I guess, because we're not going to be doing the trade-in for the foreseeable future.
And there's been some news as well. I'm not going to go into detail at all here, but there was a Sony press conference in Japan just a couple days ago, and they released some new information about some upcoming games, upcoming technology. So there'll be some stuff to discuss for sure.
Cool. All right. So I think we're going to call it there.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching as usual, and yeah, tune in for the next one.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a good night.